Hey, everybody, welcome back. I love doing these shows. I learned so much. These authors have been so generous sharing what they've learned in their author journey. Without any further delay, let me introduce this week's episode. You didn't pour your heart into writing a book just to cross it off your to do list. You wrote it because you have something to say that matters, something that deserves to be heard, remembered, and built on for years to come. A book isn't just a moment, it's a movement. It captures your ideas, your voice, and your perspective in a way that no speech, post, or marketing campaign ever could. And when you treat it like the powerful foundation it is, your book doesn't just open doors, it builds your legacy. That's why I'm so passionate about supporting entrepreneurs beyond just publishing, because the real magic happens when you use your book as a launchpad for your bigger mission, the one that shapes your business, your brand, and your impact. If you're ready to think bigger about what your book can do, I'd love to chat. You can book a 30-minute brainstorming session at booklaunchbrainstorm.com. Now, let's turn it over to our panelists who have a message that they felt compelled to share. With me today, I have CB Bowman, has written 2 books, including Courage to Leap and Lead, a roadmap for redefining failure into success, a powerful roadmap that teaches leaders how to turn failure into success, embrace bold decision making, and foster a culture of innovation through the everyday practice of courageous leadership. Gloria Treister wrote Wellness 101, Simple Steps to Good Health, a practical guide that empowers readers to simplify wellness, take control of their health, and create a personalized plan for a vibrant, healthier life. Please join me in welcoming CB and Gloria. CB, I'm going to kick things off with you. I'd love to get a better sense of the kinds of readers you were hoping to attract when you wrote this book. And welcome.
Well, thank you. And it's a pleasure to be here with my colleagues, Robbie and Gloria. I wrote the book because somebody said to me, could I deliver a keynote presentation on courage? And I said, I don't know anything about courage. You got the wrong woman. But I was committed to do it. So when I sat down at the keyboard and I started writing the presentation, I realized, hey, wait a second, maybe I should listen to all those voices throughout my life who told me that I was courageous. And I realized that there was a methodology that I use in my life to be courageous, and especially in terms of leadership. And as a Black woman of a certain age, I've been through a lot of racism, and yet I still survived and flourished. And what was that about in my life? And so I wrote this book and broke down the steps that it took for me to be courageous, hoping to share that with other leaders and individuals.
And that turned into this book. I love this story of people think, I mean, they see in you the knowledge, even though you yourself were like, I mean, I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know. And then it's like, oh, you did the work and you're like, I do know. And I now feel like I have to tell other people, not just in this one program. I mean, much like I
Mhm.
just said, right? You couldn't contain what you had to share in a single speech. It now has to be built on a much bigger platform. And the book has let you do that. We're going to definitely come back to sort of the what comes next when you have a book that's so transformative. But Gloria, I want to invite you in. Thanks again for being here and share a little bit about who you had in mind when you were writing your book.
Okay. Thank you, Robbie. And it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. The book actually started as a bunch of handouts for corporate wellness program
Mm.
that we were doing for a Fortune 200 company. We won an RFP, to create a wellness program for the employees, about 60,000 employees. And we knew that we had to have some handouts. We knew we had to have some information to teach. And what I discovered through the process of doing this was that people were confused. People really didn't know where to start when it came to their health. And I found that my superpower, so to speak, was to take complicated medical things and make it simple because wellness is really easier than people think. And what has happened is with the explosion of the internet, people are getting a lot of information. They're getting information overload, and much of it is confusing and contradictory. So, what I decided to do right when COVID started, I guess, was I've got all these handouts. let's figure out how I can take this, build on it, and create a guidebook where people can really get good, solid information about what should you eat? What are all the diets? What do they mean? How do I do an exercise program? How do I know if I'm toxic? There's so many things that play into a well life, and it has to be very individualized and personalized. And that's what I tried to do with the book. One thing that I did pay very close attention to was the fact that people don't have much of an attention span anymore. So the book has a lot of colorful illustrations with little things that you can do, little action steps. I even have a character in there who's my little empowerment man that teaches you little empowerment tips. So I tried to make it fun at the same time.
You know, I've seen this book. It's a just for those who aren't able to see this book. I know that it's like think of a coffee table book. Like it's a substantial size heft, beautiful colors, like lots of illustrations. Vibrant is another word I would call it. And to think that that result was from handouts, like like another example of you start down a path. You don't know the book is at the end of this path, but you start down a path and you keep moving in that direction, and then the book suddenly becomes the goal, and then you realize the book's not the goal. The book is this foundational piece to build from. Now, CB, I know you've got 2 books. I'm going to come to you second on this question, but Gloria, how do you get past the inner voice in your head about whether or not you should have even written the book? Like, it's one thing to create handouts to go with a talk. Was there anything, the inner dialogue, that you had to kind of get past in order to commit to and follow through on this project?
Yeah, it was really hard. I mean, it took me, I would say, from start to finish about 7 years to do this, because I kept rewriting it. I finished it, and then I said, oh, but wait a minute, I got to talk about epigenetics because that's the newest thing. So I wanted to make sure that I stayed current. But I think the really big driving force was that I told my grandkids I was writing a book, and I thought, you can't not do it now. You have to do this because you want them to respect you and think you're really cool. So honestly, for me, just saying it out loud and making the statement that I'm writing a book, I'm doing this, I'm going to try to change people's lives in a good way was really my driving force. But telling other people that I was doing it really helped me stay on task and get it done. And as you both know, being authors yourselves, so there are times where you're like, what am I doing? This is too much. But it's worth it at the end. It really is. I'm very proud of it, and it's my legacy.
I 100% agree about the external accountability. That for me is a huge motivating factor. Keeps me moving towards the next step in the long list of tasks related to doing a book. I don't identify as a writer, so the fact that I'm working on book 4 is sort of remarkable. But you know, you fall into this practice and you realize the possibilities of it, and then to hold yourself accountable, you start telling people. Now, CB, this book, The Courage to Leap and Lead, is your first book, and then you have a second book as well?
Yes. So I actually had written chapters in books other people put out.
Uh-huh.
And I thought to myself, on my bucket list, I'm putting down that I want to write a book because I'm tired of contributing to other successes. And so when this came up, I've been thinking about writing a book. There was a lot of false starts in book names that I came up with. But finally, I was challenged by a mentee of mine who said to me, and he's a former NFL football player, he said, CB, have you written a book? And I said, well, I've written chapters. He said, that wasn't my question. And I thought, oh God, the mentee is teaching the mentor. So I said, no, I haven't. He said, I'm going to introduce you to somebody who's going to help you get this book done because you need to put this wisdom on paper. And I thought, okay, fine. And he did. And there was a process that was so simple that I literally wrote the book in a year. And it got published a year from the day I started it. And I had a lot of stops because during that period of time, my husband became ill. And so, of course, he came first. But then I got it done. I got
Mhm.
it done. And I was so proud of myself.
I love that you're both speaking to sort of the community piece of writing a book. People encouraging you, saying it's something that is needed, that they're looking forward to reading, and then connecting you with the kind of supports you need to move through it. It's also hard, I will say, Gloria, like my third book is about Zoom, and like the health, like there's a lot changing. There's a lot of
Yeah.
new things. So I had to really think about, well, how do I approach this so that it's more evergreen? There's more
Mhm.
philosophy, strategy, technique, as opposed to specific push the button. Like there's that too, but like that could change. And literally while I was writing the book, I things were changing. But it's about understanding how to help people think critically, be curious. I think there's a lot of that in the kind of book you wrote as well. And Gloria, what led to the decision to write the second book? Because that was that the like you had this knowledge base. Tell us a little bit about that second book.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about wellness as a strategy in
Mhm.
life and in business. I think a lot of companies are considering having a wellness program, for instance. And, is that an expense? I think it's a strategy. Why would
Mm.
you not want energetic, vital, happy people, healthy people working in your company versus people who come to work who don't have the energy, who don't have that spark that you need when you're living a well life? And I really see it as a way to get to more productivity, have a better corporate culture. I think right now people are missing community. I think if you build a community around wellness and wellness practices, everybody winds up taking that and making the company better, but it also translates into a better lived life in your personal life, in your relationships, in your community. And so you need that energy. If you don't feel good, how do you do good? You've got to have that good feeling. And I think what happens to a lot of people is that they think it's harder than it really is. Wellness is simple. That's why I said simple steps to good health. It's not that difficult. In our current healthcare environment, there's a lot of situations where people are dismissed, doctors don't
Mm.
have time. It's not their fault. It's the system right now, and we don't have a good system. And I felt like empowering people was part of that strategy. And I want to talk more to that point in the new book and helping people understand the value of having a longer health span versus just a longer lifespan. You want
Ooh,
to
that last
be
piece.
longer.
Underscore that last piece.
Yeah.
So I probably what I love about this is that book two wasn't even a twinkle in your eye when you started, but now you start to see like there's a different context that you can bring to this, or a different perspective, or right. Like I love that. And then CB, you actually have a second book that's out. You put two books as part of this Kindle cross promotion campaign, which is how we all connected. Um, Tell us a little bit about that book, because that's a slightly different audience.
Yeah, it's a very different audience. And I'm
Yeah.
actually working on my third book, which goes back to the original audience. But it's a whole series on courage that I'm doing. The second book it's a really interesting story because my publisher refused to publish the second book. And so I self published the second book because I felt that there was an audience for it. So the second book is called Courage to Leap and Market. And it's for authors to learn how to market their books because, we all pour our hearts and souls into marketing a book. And not all of us have the contacts and the knowledge and information, general information that Robbie has. And so I said, okay, for those of us who can't afford somebody really good to direct us, there's got to be a lot that has to be said, a lot that I experienced. And I started investigating. And I thought, my background is marketing. I've got to write this book on marketing your book. And so that's how
Mhm.
that came about.
Yeah, appreciate you putting it all together in one place. And to that end, I'd love to actually hear, CB, when you were working on your first book, The Courage to Sleep and Lead, early on, before you had the book like in your hands, were there particular success metrics you were hoping for? If the book blank, I'll know it was a success. And then how did that change once the book was a reality and you started to interact with the book in the world?
Yeah, it's a complex answer because I haven't reached the goal that I wanted from writing the book, but I've reached goals that I didn't know I'd be reaching. So um, I wrote the book obviously to support other people and to share my vision. But along the way, because originally it was written for personal use, along the way I thought, wait a second, this applies to leaders. And so there was a shift in my thinking about the book after I wrote the book. And I thought, okay, so leaders really, really need courage right now. We are in 6 pandemics at once, and I call them social pandemics. My May issue of LinkedIn newsletter will talk more about that. So everybody take a look at that. At any rate, just a little plug. Um, I thought, okay, well, then you need to really refocus, retune your original thinking about the success of this book. So I originally wanted it so that I can develop more speaking engagements. What's happened is I've become known as the courage person in micro courage, right? Which is a word that I created. And micro courage is about identifying small steps that you take that you need to pat yourself on the back that lead to the greater courage goal. And so my becoming known as that person, I didn't foresee.
What's so interesting is that term does stand out in the book, and it's kind of interesting because it names something that I think we all need to be doing, which is whatever
Wait
we're
a
aiming
second,
to do.
Robbie, you mean you read my book?
I read your book.
Oh my God.
I read your book. So, for me to know that, we often have these big goals in mind and they're daunting. Like just even thinking of a book as a good example, what are the small steps that we could be taking to move that forward? And I think it stands out because it helps people ground themselves in that, instead of being like overwhelmed by the big, daunting, audacious task or goal, they could just, what's the next little thing you do? So I'm not surprised in a way that's you kind of, it separates out and distinguishes you from general leadership coach, general leadership speaker, because there's a lot of speakers on those topics. And I think it's actually a good market. I mean, I just want to name it as like a marketing technique to have something of yours that is adjacent to the larger topic that everyone's already talking about, that people immediately know, oh, I get this. I get this, and I'm curious to know more about it. So I think that's why it's resonating. So, were you thinking initially about book sales, hitting #1, getting reviews? Like, were any of those metrics part of the equation too, or was it really about speaking?
It was really just about speaking. And then along the way, I said, well, wait a second. You're doing all this work. It should be a bestseller. Okay, in my dreams. But it did hit #1 in Amazon. Both books did. And I had no idea getting reviews, that was important. And fortunately, I've got over 50 5-star reviews, and I felt really good about that. And so, yeah, and it gave me, as an introverted, dyslexic Black woman, the courage to write more. Now, the negative is when I get afraid to do something, like knock on somebody's door and say, hire me, I go, where's your courage?
Yeah, take a little spoonful of your own medicine. Hey, maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. So CB, I want to actually talk about the reviews because you did something that I'm going to describe as pretty extraordinary. And so I want to underscore what you just said about getting reviews. But before I talk about your reviews specifically, how did you realize they were important, and what was your process for getting them?
I didn't. That's, sort of like a fool's gold or something. I had no idea how important they were. I did a book launch because my peers were doing book launches, and I thought, okay, I'm going to do that too. And I had no clue the amount of work that took. I mean, it was harder than writing the darn book. And so I encourage people to go to you, Robbie, to let you do their book launches.
Yeah, I'm like, let's make a clip of that.
Yeah.
That was CB's like, I'm a marketing professional. I wrote a book. I did a launch party. Oh my gosh, the whole thing was so much work. Yeah.
Exactly. And so now I lost my track.
Well, let me just say that what you did that was what was I'm going to
Okay.
call
Yeah.
extraordinary. To
Um,
get even 20 written reviews takes a certain level of effort. And I want to distinguish written reviews from ratings. So the ratings are the 1 through 5 stars. Running a campaign to get people to leave you a 5-star rating isn't that hard because they don't have to buy anything, they don't have to write anything, right? They just like show up, they click the thing, and they're done. But that's not meaningful both to you, and it also doesn't help Amazon's algorithm as far as you being found higher on the search results page. It doesn't get factored in the way a written review does. So you have 54 total ratings, and 53 of those have a written review. The fact that almost 100% of the people who came to the page to leave you a review wrote one is one of the things I think needs to be named, because again, you did a campaign to get reviews then, not just to like have people do 5 stars, which is a different animal there. Also, you have these reviews are detailed. Like scrolling through them, they're not they're all like paragraphs long, like they're all very involved, which is wonderful. About half of them are verified reviews, which is important as far as the algorithm. So about half of people purchase the book beforehand. Some of them may have gotten your book because I know you're probably doing bulk orders of books or giveaways and things like that. And the other thing is recency. You have a lot of recent reviews, and I think that's also tied to the fact that you just participated in this Kindle cross promotion campaign. So even though the book's been out a little bit, you've got a steady stream of reviews coming in. And all of those factors is going to increase the visibility and discoverability of your book, which again is in a kind of competitive general leadership, world. But for your book to stand out compared to other books, it just, didn't they published. Like that's literally the last thing they did. They didn't market. They didn't get reviews. They hadn't really talked about their book since. So kudos to just having a plan, sticking with the plan, and making the effort. And then the fact that you didn't know going in that was going to happen and how much work it is to do. I wanted to have a public recognition for you, CB,
Thank
of
you.
getting it done.
Well, thank you. It's funny because I did not know until just now there was a difference between the ratings and the reviews. Who knew? But the answer to your question was I asked people. And, I gave them guidance and I said, this is really important. But excuse me, prior to that, I had done a lot of reviews for other people.
Mhm.
And so when it was my time to ask for a review or a favor, they were like, absolutely, absolutely. So that's one thing. And I thanked everybody. And I had contests. I said the first 5 people get a present, a mug, which is not quite within Amazon's rules, but, I wasn't bribing them. I just said after the fact.
Yeah, I think that's just it. Like you can't offer. This is a good distinguishing. We'll make a distinguishing remark here. You cannot offer something in exchange
Right.
for a review. So if they don't know in advance of writing the review that you're going to send them something, then it really it's a line there. But it's not. You're not crossing Amazon's line. The mistake I think authors make is saying the first 25 people to write a review will be entered into a raffle or will get a half hour with me or whatever it might be. Then it's an exchange. And I also think we should stop asking people for a 5-star review, because there's a way in which a well-written 4-star review will actually help the book more, because everyone's going to click on that 4-star review and read it if there's a lot of 5-star reviews. And if the 4-star review is informative and clarifying like who it's for, that's going to make people go, oh, then this book is for me.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so it could be useful, and it also makes the book look a little more legit. Like it's a little weird when a book, like I actually have this issue, is a funny thing to complain about, but my last book has almost exclusively 5-star reviews. And so when I finally saw a couple of 4-star, I was like, oh, okay, like that looks a little more balanced.
Legitimate.
But I don't want to tell people what stars to put. I just want them
Yeah.
to write a thoughtful, even just 2 or 3 sentence review. But again, the longer reviews can really matter. And I see, Gloria, similarly, when I look through your reviews, like these are substantial responses, 2, 3 paragraphs. I have to give a shout out to Bruce Shear. He's a fellow author who also participates in these
He's
campaigns.
amazing.
He has, if you go to any of our books, you're going to see a picture of him holding up the Kindle version in his phone next to his face. I took a picture of himself doing that. It's so cute, and it's like his thing. But he started his by just saying in all caps, the visuals are amazing. So that's to you, Gloria, for just how great this book is. So it's just, I think reviews take tremendous effort. Getting at least to 20 really can separate people from what most people are doing. And to that end, actually, Gloria, you're at 22 ratings and 19 written reviews. Mine's coming, so I will be 20, but I hope people follow me and also do a review for you. But it's quite an endeavor. But the long-lasting results, right? It's social proof, it's engaging with your network and all of that. And I love what you said, CB. You wrote reviews, right? By the way, Bruce writes a book. And how many people are going to want to review for him? Like, so Bruce, tell us
I'll
about
be
your book,
there.
right? Like,
I'll be
we
there.
want to help get his book out there. So he's got one book that book could definitely get more reviews, but maybe he'll write a second and third book just because he's got so much goodwill in this space. Other than reviews, though, I'm kind of curious what else has sort of been challenging. Gloria, you sound like you had a lot of content you had to get through. I also understand you had to teach yourself how to do the layout to get it the way you envisioned it in your head. I remember talking to you about that.
I did.
It's you're. I mean, there's a little bit of like, what you want it to look like, right? So tell us a little bit about how you didn't stall, even though you kept running into these sort of technical hiccups.
Yeah, it was really hard when I first started writing it. I was told that it needed to be in Adobe InDesign. So I learned how to use Adobe InDesign and laid it out with a guy that I met in my holistic health training. And the book has a personality, and I didn't want to lose that. And I was being encouraged not to have it be full color. Well, no, it has to be full color. And do you need this many graphics? Yes, I do need this many graphics. And so I wanted to keep the personality because I didn't want it to be hard for people to get through. One of the decisions I made early on was that this book was going to be 100% positive. You will not see, don't do this or you should do that. People don't want to be shoulded. And I think especially when it comes to your health, people push back. So I wanted to make it very friendly, very fun. And I think that that's something that we've been able to do. I
Brilliant.
do have a question though for you, and I wanted to bring up something that I did as it relates to reviews. Do you mind if we step
Sure,
back
yeah.
to that for a second?
Mhm.
Before I actually put the book out there to the public, I decided that I needed some God, what's the word I'm looking for? Recognition, maybe, but not really. Just support from my gurus in the wellness
Endorsements.
field, the people who I
Mhm.
look up to, the people who I think globally, because I'm a global wellness person, I'm very active in the global community. I wanted their stamp of approval on my book. And so I spent a month reaching out to specific people, trying to get them to read the book and review it. And it was interesting because there's one guru, he's actually the father of functional medicine. And my book has a functional medicine perspective. I wanted his opinion because he teaches wellness, but he's teaching at a higher level. He's teaching it to me. My book is teaching it to people who are at a beginner level, who are just saying, I don't know what to eat. It says eat eggs, but
Right.
then it says, no, don't eat eggs. No, only eat the yolk. No, only eat
Mhm.
the whites. And before you
Yeah.
know it, you're going, oh, screw it. I'm just going to go get a bag of chips. I can't deal with this, right?
Yeah.
And so I really wanted them to look at it and say, yes, this is all accurate. I had doctors read it, multiple doctors, And I really spent time getting editorial reviews. What do you
Hmm.
think about that, Robbie?
Yeah.
Because
So
you're in there with my book.
yeah, so editorial reviews have a place. In fact, there's been a little bit of a controversy going on in the world of publishing about editorial reviews. Um, so, in the best case scenario, editorial reviews are from people who have familiarity with your work, but have big credibility in your space, either by name or position. So either they're someone that everyone would know, like Dan Pink or Malcolm Gladwell, or they're somebody who has a VP, CEO, New York Times bestselling author type title, and they actually take time to read the book and write a thoughtful review. And then those reviews, those editorial reviews, go as advanced praise in the beginning of the book, or maybe the back cover of the book. And there's a space on the Amazon book page for editorial reviews as well. So the best case scenario is they do all that. What also tends to happen is people who don't know you very well get bombarded with these requests and have to make a decision on how much time and energy to put into it. Sometimes they're like, oh, just write me something. And so it's not as, directly meaningful as if you're really looking for that approval and their like stamp of approval and they say, yes, this is a good book. So there's a little bit of that going on. And I just saw that there's some publishers that are like, we're not going to lean on authors to do this anymore. But I still like them. Truthfully, when I'm laying out my cover design for my fourth book, I at first laid it out without the little blurb at the top. And it wasn't until I added the blurb, then it felt like a book, right? Like to me, I think it's important, but I'm also including reviews from either clients who have done my process or from publishers who have sent clients my way who've done well with my process. So I think it would, I think a month is fine, but like don't delay your book being out in the world because you don't have 42 of these. I think max 10.
Mhm.
And they're different than the Amazon reviews because they serve sort of a slightly different purpose. They're good on the book's page and all of that. But what we're always talking about is that everyone glances at the top of the Amazon page and looks at that number, which is the total number of ratings, but they'll also scroll down and start reading them. More than 90% of buyers check reviews before making a purchase, but very, very small percentage of people write reviews all the time. And so we want to leverage that because it means a small percentage of people have an outsized influence on the buying habits of everyone else. So the reason to get a mentor, guru, VIP person on your side isn't just for the endorsement, it's for them actually leveraging their network to amplify your message. So if they're the kind of person who would do more, not just write something or ask you to write something, but would send it to their email list, invite you onto their podcast, include you in a post that they write on Forbes. That's where you're really building that relationship. But it doesn't happen because you just met them. It happens because you've been building a relationship with them over a long period of time. So for people listening, the way I would answer this is if you're in the process of writing a book and you have your sights on certain people in your industry to write those endorsements, or even more, write the forward, right? Be really involved in this process. Engage now. Start really thinking about how to get on their radar. Offer as much as you can to them before you make any kind of ask, and be selective about what you ask people based on the relationship you already have. So I think they serve a purpose, but they're a little different than the Amazon reviews, which it could be from anyone, but ideally would be from prospects and referral partners, people who are really going to benefit from your book. I will say one more thing on this, because obviously I could just write a whole book on it. Um,
And you will.
yeah, it's coming soon. Launch your book, An Entrepreneur's Guide to Reviews That Drive Revenue, soon in stores near you. To me, I think the mistake authors make is they hear, like CB was like, I didn't know about this review process. Oh, okay, I'll do that. And then they put incredible effort to getting reviews from friends and family, not from the colleagues, clients, and prospects who understand the work.
Mhm.
And the people least likely to understand why a review matters and what your book's about or even what you do are your friends and family. They really don't. They don't have an appreciation for it the same way. They might love you, but they don't get what you're doing the way someone who's been touched and had their life improved because of what you do in the world. So the people who get your value, make sure you're getting reviews from those people, because that's what builds this pipeline to new opportunities, media, revenue, etc. So this is a cautionary note. Like, it's not just about numbers. It's about the book being a way to continue a conversation with the people in your community, in your network, that would want to rally around this, that would want to amplify this message and pass your book along, because word of mouth is still gold. It's like how we hear about things that we trust is through word of mouth. So I hope I more than answered that question, Gloria. Thank you for the
It was worth the time I put into it, though, Robbie. I felt so affirmed.
Oh, yeah.
Sending this to Dr. Jeffrey Bland, who is the father of functional medicine, and getting back an email from him, which started, "I love your book," with an exclamation point.
Amazing.
I couldn't speak for like a couple hours after that. I just sat there reading it over and over again.
Yeah.
Going, wow. And it kind of helped me get to the next step, which was figuring out how to do a book launch.
Awesome.
And I hear you, CB, when you talk about the book. I did a book launch party too. And then I went to Sophie Lechner's, which Robbie put together. And I was like, oh, okay, that's how you do it. But but it was good. It wasn't, I think you did a great job on that.
Yeah.
And I think for my next book, I would love to do that again. But you need that affirmation. You need that little bit of push through each step that keeps you going, that keeps you motivated, that keeps you excited about your book, because it's lonely sometimes.
It's interesting because we were talking earlier about micro courage, right, CB? This is almost micro affirmation. And I think that, I think this is where I think it's important. Getting started, right? Just finding whatever affirmations you can get from other people, from yourself, to commit to the project. I have authors collect reviews via a Google form before the book is published, based on an advanced reader copy, and we provide them reader prompts. Those first dozen reviews come in way before the book's been published, and no one is cheating off each other, right? Everyone has to write their own review. Those early reviews are affirmations for that author that they are on the right track, and it gives them the courage to keep going and to share their vision and voice widely, because they're about to step into a very public space, and that could feel really daunting, particularly if what you're saying is meaningful, personal, right? This is why we're writing this book. So those early, whether it's an endorsement from someone you admire, or just people in your community and network who are giving you that early advance review, that's something that I don't think I talk about enough, but it really changes the dynamic, because they're shifting then from writing a book to marketing a book. And it's at that moment, I think they need to hear that. And I just want to come back to CB on this, because you now have the experience of both being the author, but also trying to explain to people how to market a book. I'm curious about how you get people sort of mentally ready for that. And are they clear on the why? Like, is for you, for your own books, was the reader clearly able to move through a pipeline back to a business? Was that all, when you were talking about doing speaking or et cetera, is all that sort of built in? And is that part of what you're messaging when you're talking to authors?
I'm not sure I understand the question, because it's complex. So
yeah, sorry.
Me again.
Okay, I'll ask it this way. If I'm reading your book, CB, either of your books, and I get super excited about what you're saying, how do I find you, and what's the next thing I can do with you? Like, is that step by step clear? And so you were talking about wanting to get more speaking opportunities from that first book.
Mm-hmm.
Was that sort of built into the design of the book for authors, for the people who are reading it? And is that also some of what you're talking about when you're talking about marketing a book?
Yeah, it was built into the first book, because the first book has work pages in it. In addition, at the end, it talks about being certified as a courage, Michael Courage professional.
Nice.
But I wanted to address also something that you said about editorial reviews. I was really fortunate in that Marshall Goldsmith wrote the foreword and the introduction at the top. And I had people like Gary Ridge, the former CEO of WD-40, write the endorsement. He was one of the two people. The other one was Gilbert, who wrote a testimonial on the back, and he's the former CEO of Best Buy. But one of the things, I happen to know these people from the work that I do. But I was very careful about the ask. I did not ask them. I asked Marshall to ask them.
Mm.
And they would never say no to Marshall. So you have to be a little strategic
That's clever.
in how you get your editorial reviews. It's not an easy ask. And so I just wanted to point that out to people. You just can't pick up the phone and say, hey, could you write this for me? The other thing that they will ask you for is a galley, which I didn't even know what a galley was.
Essentially, the advanced reader copy would be another way of saying it.
Advanced, yes, reader copy. And they also said, give us an idea of what's important to you.
Right.
So be prepared for those questions.
I think it's particularly helpful, CB, to share what's important to you in their perspective. So I remember one time having someone who talked about being fascinating, I think, was like one of her taglines. So when I was approaching her, I pointed out the places where she might be most interested.
Right.
And then it fit with her brand. Like when she focused on, within my context of that book, it fit with her brand, which made her want to do it. So these are really good points to leverage. This is about networking. Honestly, what you just described is thoughtful networking, having the right relationships, knowing what asks to make. That's a beautiful sort of reminder for all of us.
Yeah. And the other thing I did is I pointed out to them which chapter might resonate with them the most. I am asked to write reviews constantly because of my position as CEO and founder of the Association of Corporate Executive Coaches and my podcast, which has over 200 episodes on courage to leap and lead. And what bothers me the most is when somebody says to me, can you write a review? I have no idea what the book is about. I don't know the person, and I have no idea what's important for them in asking me to write a review. So I think clarity is, some people feel like it's overdoing the ask, but it helps the clarity. It helps the person who's writing the review write one faster and stronger.
As we're wrapping up here, I'm wondering if each of you could share a very brief, like, this is a suggestion I have, advice I have for someone who's writing a book, particularly to grow a business. We've I think done an incredible job explaining endorsements and writing reviews and such. But Gloria, do you have something that comes to mind that you would share with someone who's maybe listening and thinking, should I write a book?
Oh, wow. I think if it's in you and it's a burning desire, which it was for me, I think a lot of people have passion for a particular topic. And when you do, it makes it a little easier because you want to tell the world about it. I'm very passionate about helping people get and stay well and live a better life for themselves, their families. And so for me, simplifying wellness was a passion that I had to get out there. I wanted to share it with the world. And quite honestly, I went to the bookstore and sat there and looked at all the books on the shelf about wellness. And what I found was that most of the books were about a particular topic: heal your gut, how to lose weight, do this diet, do that, the paleo diet, do the Mediterranean diet. But I did not see anything out there that explained, what does it really mean to be well? And what are the steps from A to Z to get there? What do you need to know to actually get healthy in your life and live a well life? I feel like, as I mentioned earlier, sometimes you go to see a doctor talk about health and wellness, and they talk up here. They're not talking at a level where you can take that information and actually implement it in your life. And so
it sounds like the advice is, if you are passionate,
if you have that burning passion,
stop you.
Put it on paper, get it done, get it out there, and share it with the world, because there's good stuff out there to share.
How can people find you and follow your work?
Well, they can find me at wellnessevolution.com. wellness101.com. That's my company and my website, which I founded in 2002. I've been in wellness for many, many years, healthcare for over 40. And also on LinkedIn, I have a weekly article that I write called Wellness 101, which is also the name of my book. And on Wellness 101 for the articles, each week I talk about a topic that's newsworthy. It's something people want to know about. And I break it down once again into the simplest steps that make it easy to assimilate that information into your life and then implement it. So
Thank you.
Wellness 101 and wellnessevolution.com. And then also there's a link for a free 20-minute conversation about wellness. We can talk about what your questions are, what you'd like to know. And I love doing that. I love talking to people about health and wellness.
Brilliant. And CB, what's your best advice for someone?
Well, I like to say to especially people in the coaching space now is that a book is your new business card. It does not have to be this gigunda book, microcourage. It could be a small pamphlet. It could be an ebook, or it could be just a regular book that's thin. But get it done. It's really critical to your credibility. In terms of reaching me,
Yeah.
it's real easy. Just Google CB Bowman. You've got an opportunity to be on my podcast, which is fabulous, called Courage to Leap and Lead. Send me articles for my newsletter, which is a LinkedIn newsletter, and I have over 1,000 people. I'm on LinkedIn. I have probably about 15,000 followers. I'm on all social media. And my website, Courage Consulting.
Courage Consulting. Fantastic. Yeah. By the way, we're going to put all of these links in the show notes at bizbookpubhub.com. And you also find show notes from all the other episodes that come out every Tuesday and Thursday. You'll find an invitation to join one of our free virtual networking events that I host each month, to join our Kindle Cross promotion campaigns that I organize 3 times a year, and to connect with experts, our hub partners who can help you move through the writing, editing, publishing, and marketing stages of your author journey. I just want to say thank you to our panel for this really interesting conversation. Thanks all.
Thank you. I want to say thank you to you, Robbie, who's put in so much work to help authors all over the world. We are just fortunate to have you in our space.
Oh, thank you.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you.